Good evening, I'm Joel Engardio. Normally, I'm the producer of Inside MSU, working behind the scenes throughout the week to put together the show, but tonight, I get to sit in the hot seat, and what a hot one it is. Tonight, we're talking about gun control. The Brady bill takes effect next week. It's been 90 days since President Clinton signed it into law on November 30th. The Brady bill will impose a nationwide 5-day waiting period for the purchase of handguns, and that's supposed to allow for background checks on the handgun buyers. A tremendous increase of gun violence has motivated many people to advocate further gun control. But many other law-abiding citizens who desire guns for sport and protection feel this infringes on their rights. The problem, they say, lies with the criminal, not the gun. Ultimately, the Second Amendment of the Constitution guarantees us all a right to bear arms. Yet guns are getting in the wrong hands. So is the answer prevention through total gun control, or do we need to concentrate on locking up more criminals and keeping them there? Or is there a compromise? And that's what we'll talk about tonight. Joining us is Sarah Brady on the phone line from Washington. She, as head of the group Handgun Control Incorporated, is the force behind the Brady bill. Her husband, James Brady, is the famous name behind it. In 1981, James Brady was shot and seriously injured and disabled during the assassination attempt on President Ronald Reagan. Brady was Reagan's press secretary. The would-be assassin, John Hinckley, used a $29 revolver. Since then, Sarah Brady has been relentless in combating handgun violence. I'm going to talk with Mrs. Brady for the next 15 or 20 minutes about her cause and some of the criticism it often receives. Later, we'll hear from Tom Washington. He's the vice president of the National Rifle Association. That's a group that champions the Second Amendment and has strongly opposed the Brady bill. After that, we'll open the phone lines, and you can give us your reactions. Mrs. Brady, are you there?
I am.
We welcome you to the airwaves of Michigan State University. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of the Brady bill and some of its criticism, I'd like the listeners to get an understanding of why you've spent so much of really the last decade on this crusade. You, your husband, your family experienced a great tragedy, but by taking on this cause, it seems it's something you have to confront, face, relive every day you go into work. How do you do this? What motivates you to do this?
Well, I think more than anything else, I mean, our particular tragedy is over and done with, and we're well on the road and have been for 10 years to recovery and doing well. But there are other families, day in and day out, who are going through the same type of tragedy. And our purpose is to do what we can do to avert death and injury by handguns.
When President Clinton signed the Brady bill into law on November 30th, your husband, James Brady, said this about the passage. He said it marked, quote, the end of unchecked madness and the commencement of a heartfelt crusade for a safer and saner country, unquote. How does the Brady bill, or any legislation for that matter, make America safer and saner? Can this really be done? Or how do
well, I'll tell you what I think is, and we all believe that the Brady bill in and of itself will make a difference. It is and it was intended to be a national standard to be sure that every state in this country, at the very least, runs a background check on gun purchasers. In other words, make sure that they're not a fugitive, they're not a felon, they're not a child, no, they're not underage, they're not precluded by law already from owning a gun. That's all that law does. In and of itself, will it solve all the problems? No, but it is a very good beginning.
Now, isn't there, I read somewhere in 22 states already require some sort of waiting period?
And for those states who, not waiting period, the key here is background check. For the states who already run a background check, they are not even affected by the Brady bill.
Okay, but
it's intended to bring into compliance the other states which do not run a background check.
But in the states that do run the background checks, obviously crime has been on the increase. How is the Brady bill going to be different?
I think you've just made a grand generalization that is or is not necessarily true.
Okay.
I mean, crime throughout the country has increased. Some crimes have decreased. For instance, homicide in this country has gone down by 11%. However, gun-related homicides have gone up by 25%. So you can't make some big, broad generalization by saying crime goes up or crime goes down. Crime and gun-related deaths and injuries are two different subjects. Let's talk apples, apples, oranges, oranges.
Okay, with the Brady bill, the 5-day waiting period, you say, gives the background check. That do they have criminal records? Are they mentally unstable? Some of the criticism that I've heard is people wonder, is the background check constitutional? Is it something that can feasibly be done?
The law already says that anyone who is a fugitive, a felon, who is under 21, who is an illegal alien, or who has been adjudicated mentally ill may not purchase a gun. So all the Brady bill does is provide a mechanism to catch those people. You can't put them on an honor system. You can't say to them, fill out a form which says, are you a fugitive? Of course, are they going to say, yes, I'm wanted for murder in Maine?
Okay. With the 5-day waiting period, I'm wondering how effective it will be in the fact that, do you think it may ever hinder the victim? People will say, oh, criminals are going to get guns regardless, but someone who needs that added protection, say there's a stalker or intruder, and they've been on the waiting list for 3 days.
You have to go back and think. The Brady bill does not preclude a law-abiding person from purchasing a gun.
But I mean the 5-day waiting period, though. If they got to wait 5 days.
Baloney. If they are being stalked, the Brady bill provides for them to go to the local law enforcement and get a waiver and to get a gun immediately. If they're being stalked, there is absolutely nothing that precludes them from getting a gun immediately. The only people who are going to be stopped at all are the criminals, the drug lords.
Right, and that brings me to my next question. A lot of people say, ultimately, it's not the gun at fault, but the person who uses it. So how is the Brady bill going to help punish the criminals or correct their violent actions?
Well, you cannot prevent a criminal from performing a crime ahead of time, but you can take the tool of their trade out of their hands. And guns are the tools of the trade.
When the debate over gun control, when people talk about it, it always quickly boils down to the basic element, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. I mean, obviously, Brady bill isn't proposing to abolish or alter any of the Second Amendment, but the critics do like to say that, well, it's like placing stipulations in the Bill of Rights. It's like putting a waiting period on free speech. I mean, how do you react to comments like this?
Now, I do not advocate, and I want to say that loud and clear for your listeners, I do not advocate banning all handguns by any means. Gun control is not in direct opposition to the Second Amendment. Now, the NRA will say, of course, it is.
Let's talk about the NRA, National Rifle Association. We're going to hear from them shortly. But I'd like to know how you do handle, they have some powerful lobby in Congress. They do have, they say, 3 million members. This is a tough group to take on.
It's a real tough group because they have such an exorbitant amount of money. They are very powerful. And it's a very typical case of a very well-heeled special interest group being disproportionately vocal in a debate.
In the debates, it's usually NRA in one corner, Brady bill in the other, but politically, it's not really that black and white. I mean, NRA is predominantly Republican, yet your husband worked for Reagan. I mean, your resume is loaded with Republican Party duties, but the law didn't come into effect until the Clinton administration. Bush didn't really touch it. Reagan publicly supported it, but not until 1991. What do you make of all this? It seems like it's not a clear-cut thing on the party line.
No, and gun control and saving of lives should not be a bipartisan or a partisan issue. It should be bipartisan. And we've been very proud of the fact that we've had broad bipartisan support on this issue.
Why did it take so long?
Well, I think I personally have to say that President Bush was not the biggest help. We would have had this 2 years ago had he agreed to sign it, if it had been brought to his desk. The NRA is a tough group. They've got lots of money, and they put a lot of money into elections. And I think that there's none of us around who don't understand that politicians and legislators, their first interest is getting reelected. And if they fear some group putting a lot of money against them, they're not quite as brave as we would like them to be.
Last summer, speaking of brave, Janet Reno, the Attorney General, made a remark that the NRA should, quote, get lost. I mean, she said, quote, we have to do something about guns. If only this nation would rise up and tell the NRA to get lost. I mean, now this is probably the strongest blast by such a high-ranking administration official. What was your reaction to that?
I cheered her. But I do want to, and I think Janet, who's a friend, would agree here. When we talk about the NRA getting lost, it's not the members around the country. It is their leadership, their extremists, and in the last 8 to 10 years, the NRA leadership has become very extreme and very non-mainstream. And that's the group that Janet was addressing, and that I applaud her for chastising.
In the NRA argument, they do make the point that solution is not gun control, but an overhaul of the criminal justice system, stricter enforcement of jail sentences. If the criminals, we've all seen the ads, the criminals are out on the streets, not being locked up, then they're going to get the guns, commit the crimes. And there's thousands of gun laws already on the books. Why haven't they been successful yet?
Well, we've never had real gun control in the country because we've never had an enforcement mechanism. I mean, they'll talk about thousands of laws, and that might include some 75-year-old law and Walnut Creek, who knows where. Nothing is black or white. We must lock up and keep in prison certainly violent offenders, but we have to address the problem before it starts, too.
Okay, Mrs. Brady, we thank you for taking the time to join us. We're going to go to a break now, and we'll be back with Tom Washington, Vice President of the NRA.